I'll ask both of you guys this. Why not run more hurry up? And it's exactly what we talked about with the Hank Scorpio and Jared Goff when they were on the Rams and got to a Super Bowl.
Hold on. Did this dude just pick his nose? I think he did. Oh my God. I think he just dug in there. That's not Tyler. That's Scott Hastings. Dude in the upper right corner. Watch this.
We talked about with the Hank Scorpio and Jared Goff when they were on the Rams and got to a Super Bowl. Why aren't they immediately running to the line of scrimmage?
Hey, it's Danny O'Neill. I am a host, author, a Pete parser, and a general layabout here with today's episode of The Dang Apostrophe.
I know when you ask me about these injuries and I give you my thoughts, if you really want to figure it out, I think Danny O'Neill has the best translations for me.
I appreciate that, Pete. I guess 12 years of covering them on a fairly daily basis. 13 if you count this year, though I'm in a much different role. My name is Danny O'Neill. I write a newsletter called The Dang Apostrophe. It has a podcast as well as now a YouTube channel that is attached to it. Why is it called The Dang Apostrophe? Well, like that little punctuation mark in my last name.
Hanging around. Kids got alligator blood.
That's right. You can't get rid of me, at least not that fast. And today, take a listen to, it's three guys who are in Denver, including one of whom I covered. He's a former Seahawk, Tyler Polumbus, who was part of the 2010 Seahawks team. That was the first year that Pete Carroll was in town. He was one of the players on the field for Beastquake. He was with the team the following year, and then he was back in Denver. Was that 2012, 2013? Tyler ended up back in Denver. He actually won a Super Bowl with the Broncos a couple years after they faced the Seahawks in the Super Bowl game. Understandably, a fair amount of fixation in Denver over Russell Wilson. And Tyler is part of an afternoon program. It's on Altitude Sports along with Josh Dover and Scott Hastings. Hastings is the first one we're going to hear talking here. And they're talking about some of the difficulties with Russell Wilson, which actually are going to sound very, very familiar for anyone who was following Russell when he was in Seattle.
Probably confirm or deny this, but I heard today also that it's legit. Mm-hmm. That Russ has these sets of plays he wants to run, and Hackett wants him to run these sets of play. And right now, there's no compromise, or they're saying Russ is audible and out of too many of the play calls, or whatever. I was
wondering that.
And someone was telling me, and I said, well, it was an audible. He threw a 66-yard touchdown. A pretty good audible on that one.
All right, let me give you something a little bit more disturbing. Number one, I'll second that. That is going on. Probably over the last 2-3 weeks, you've had Russell Wilson and Nathaniel Hackett have their first real marital problems, disagreements on the philosophy of the offense.
Now, I'm a little surprised that hasn't come out sooner, that there hasn't been friction sooner. I mean, they've been grinding their gears for, well, it's the third month of it now. The offense has never really worked that well. Russ, I think all things considered, Russ played pretty well in the season opening game against Seattle. It was his best performance. It's one of the things that's hung around there and made me wonder how much of the challenge is physical. It's pretty clear Russ is banged up. But he's played through some pretty significant injuries in Seattle. Also, when you're the franchise quarterback and you've precipitated the kind of moves that Russ has, and you're on the field, like you've got to be able to perform. And there's not a, hey, but he was injured sort of explanation for everything. So I'm a little surprised that this hasn't come to a head sooner. There wasn't a ton of complaints in Seattle about the volume of plays Russ changed. That might have been the coaching staff sort of keeping that pretty tightly under wraps. I get a sense that this is different, though, because Russ went to Denver with the understanding that, hey, he chose that offense because he wanted that offense to, like, he has had more say from the beginning. So it's possible this was happening behind the scenes in Seattle, but that idea of there being like a real sort of butting of heads strikes me as something new, and it's related to sort of the understanding that Russ came to the team with. I think Mike Sando used the word they've empowered the quarterback, that they had empowered Russ. It was clear from the beginning that Russ had a different level of sway and influence in Denver than he ever had in Seattle. And so I kind of think that this sort of, I don't want to say power struggle because I don't know what's going on there. And honestly, I don't think any of us knew the depth of dysfunction or how contentious things truly were at times in Seattle, but this strikes me as something new. Let's get back to the show.
So there's been some behind-the-scenes conversations about those disagreements, about how they should be calling plays. More concerning to me, though, and I haven't told this on air yet because I've been trying to get a couple people to tell me it just to make sure I felt good about it, and I've had a couple people tell me it now, and I feel good about it. I don't feel good about it, but I feel confident in it. Russell is losing his mind out there. He's losing his mind. He's at the line of scrimmage using audibles from the Seahawks. The guys don't know what the audibles are. I mean, he's using code words. The guys don't know what the code words
From
are.
the last offense?
And they're coming back to the huddle, and they're like, dude, what are you saying up there? We don't know.
That's tough, man. It's probably right about here that I'm feeling bad. Maybe feeling bad for the first time for Russ in this sort of way of, if that's true, and I have no reason to doubt Tyler. And that's not just because I know Tyler, and I do, and that does play an impact. But the fact that that's happening shows how scrambled everything is in Russ's head. I do feel bad about that. And some of that is just general compassion, I think. It sucks to think that someone is struggling that badly. It's also maybe that indicates to me something about the level of sort of how much he's been rattled, because we're now past the point where it's about a physical difficulty in execution of the offense or an injury, and it's a lack of understanding, or that in those moments he's kind of overwhelmed and where he's short-circuiting a little bit, or he's just reverting to something that, look, Russ was always so good in those late game situations. And a lot of that I thought was because of his mental focus and because he did stay really calm in those situations. And I've always known that there is some level of question about his ability to execute sort of what we would refer to as a regular NFL offense. Like, why did Seattle look so different? Like, I never bought that was entirely a reflection of Pete Carroll's antiquated offensive approach. Like, no, I thought it was how Russ plays, how long he holds the ball. Like, that there were, and the benefits that you got from the way he played vastly outweighed sort of the drawbacks, which were the number of 3 and outs, the fact that you go a quarter and a half without any. And the one thing that I thought I was rock solid certain on was that in a late game situation, that dude was not fazed by those moments. I remember, everybody talks like the Russell's arrival game is 2012 against the Chicago Bears. It's the game he was so good he won it twice. He led a touchdown drive that culminated in a pass to Golden Tate. They take a 3-point lead. The defense blows it. They give up a 50-yard, Richard Sherman gives up a 50-yard completion to Brandon Marshall. The Bears kick a field goal. It goes to overtime. Seattle wins in overtime on the touchdown throw to Sidney Rice where he's knocked unconscious as he crosses into the end zone. There's like this heavy-lidded, like Russ, it's almost sleepy looking. Like he's not wide-eyed. There's just a calmness. And so to think about that same player now being in a situation where he's at the line of scrimmage repeating audibles or line calls that are from a previous team is jarring. And it's where my needle like tips over into, oh, I feel bad. Oh, that sucks. I think all of us have probably been in a situation where you're just mentally overwhelmed. Like I've gone on tilt before. Well, people have seen me go on tilt because those have tended to happen in public, whether it was calling Aaron Goldsmith, Aaron Goldschmidt, and then having the producer yelling in my ear and I realize Russ has asked for this, right? Like that's kind of the backdrop and why do I feel soft for feeling bad for him? He's asked for it. This is what he wanted. And it's not going at all the way that he expected, nor Denver expected. And there's a little bit of be careful what you wish for, and the grass is always greener. And then Brock Hewitt over this offseason, after the trade, he sent a text, and it was nice of him to include me. He said he was taking a sort of informal poll. He'll take those polls that are anonymous. I think I'm allowed to reveal that I was part of it. I mean, he told me he wouldn't reveal I was, whatever, I don't care. So I responded, and the question was kind of, who do you blame? And I was like, it's clearly Russ. This is what Russ wanted. And the line I used was, I think it's his Icarus moment. I think this is the moment where he flies too close to the sun. And I wondered if I'd be wrong, because at every turn in Russell's career, he's had, like, people have questioned or said you're not capable of doing that. Whether it was Tom O'Brien, hey, you've got to focus on football. Russ didn't focus on football. Okay, you're not going to be the starter. We're going to keep Glennon. Okay, I'm going to go to Wisconsin. And what does he do? He almost wins the Heisman Trophy. Like, I thought there was going to be, there could be that Russ proves everyone wrong again. 2015, his shoe deal's up. He's looking for a new shoe deal. Talks to Nike. They pitch a signature shoe. Nike is like, we're not doing that. We don't do signature shoes for football players anymore. Russ plays that year without a shoe deal. I think he wore Under Armour cleats for the whole year, but I don't think it was a sponsor. I think they just gave it to him. It wasn't the same as a sponsorship deal. That second half of the season, he goes off. Like, second half of 2015, Russ was an unbelievable pocket passer. Like, it was a historically prolific run that he put together. It's after Jimmy Graham goes down, they get back to the playoffs. Like, it was amazing what he did. Next year, he's got a signature shoe with Nike. So I wondered if it was going to be that sort of dynamic that, okay, I'm one of the people that's going to say, like, yeah, you're a little too big for your britches. Like, it's not quite that good. You're going to be Icarus, fly too close to the sun. Brock said he had to look up what Icarus meant. Like, Icarus is the dude that has the wax in his wings to fly, and then he ends up going too high, and the sun melts the wax, and he goes crashing to earth, and it's a story of hubris, right? Like, of thinking you're capable of more and sort of overstepping your bounds. And now it's kind of like that's what's happening, and there's a little bit of me that feels bad. Like, it's definitely true. Let's get back to Tyler.
With the play, we don't know what that is. He's losing his mind right now.
That was kind of even before you gave us some of that. Remember the Graham Glasgow play, the run play, and they say, hey, he checked to something and no one knew what it was.
Yes.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
That was in week, was that the Colts?
So right there, it just shows you Russ put the wristband on.
Put the wristband on.
You're not remembering the right place.
And
you know what else?
bunker.
I'll ask both of you guys this. Why not run more hurry up? And it's exactly what we talked about with the Hank Scorpio and Jared Goff when they were on the Rams and got to a Super Bowl.
Hold on. Did this dude just pick his nose? I think he did. Oh, my God. I think he just dug in there. That's not Tyler. That's Scott Hastings. Dude in the upper right corner. Watch this.
We talked about with the Hank Scorpio and Jared Goff when they were on the Rams and got to a Super Bowl. Why aren't they immediately running to the line of scrimmage? Hackett's talking to Russ, and then you are in your form.
Hold on. We'll get back to the content here in the hurry up, because that's something we talked about in Seattle a lot, but he totally just digs in there. Oh, no. Did he sark? I don't think he did. I think that's because I was watching it in reverse.
Hank Scorpio and Jared Goff when they were on the Rams and got to a Super Bowl. Why aren't they immediately running to the line of scrimmage? Hackett's talking to Russ, and then you are in your formation ready to call the play at 15 seconds rather than just getting set at that
Okay,
mark.
that's a fair question. And I feel like that's a little bit of the easy way out for a lot of people is they're like, just go to hurry up football. And I like hurry up football. It's a great change of pace. If you've got an offense that knows what they're doing, it's an incredible change of pace.
Especially
and I loved
here in
it
Denver, too, because you now use the altitude.
Because what was the one advantage defensive linemen had over offensive linemen? They got to rotate in and out. They got to stay fresh. So on third down, I got a fresh pass rusher coming in who's drooling, and I've got my mouth dropped trying to catch my breath.
You're
right?
on the 8th play of your drive.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But in hurry up, those guys got to stay on the field. They don't get to substitute. So I loved it as an offensive lineman when things are going well. But when things are not going well, Josh, I do not like it because what happens in that situation? Well, you're not calmly talking to the fellas. You're not calmly communicating things to the fellas. You're at the line of scrimmage. You're trying to say, hey, we got 2-jet. We got all go special. We got this going on. You got signals. It's just an opportunity for 11 guys to not be on the same page because you're using signals and everything else. I'd rather see them do the opposite. Just huddle up every single time. Take as much time as you need. Call the most basic plays you can. But make sure that everybody knows what the hell they're doing.
So you're keeping it simple in that format?
Yes.
Okay.
And go under center.
All right. That's a discussion that went on for a good 6 years in Seattle, right? The question of hurry up offense. And there's a little more clarity about that now, I think. I think I understand. I think I understand why Seattle was so much better in that situation. I think Russ is better with fewer variables. I think Russ is better with a smaller playbook. I think Russ is better in that situation. You've got, 4 or 5 plays that you're toggling between. You're not substituting personnel. Like, he's better in that situation. There's a question of how long that can remain effective. Could you go through a whole game without that? Because eventually the defense, if you're choosing between fewer plays, they're going to get a better feel for what's coming and how to attack that. But it's interesting. Tyler's point is don't do that. Don't go hurry up. And usually when people say don't go hurry up, it's because if it doesn't work, you're putting your defense right back out on the field. His perspective is no. Find some things you do well. And earlier in this segment, he'd been talking about physical run game. Just get out there and say we're going to be the more physical team. Establish an identity, which is what offensive linemen really want to do. Like that is skewed toward find something you do well and basically get simpler until you find that thing. I don't know if that's going to be better here. Maybe it will. It probably, if nothing else, establishing a run game will give their offense something to lean on that is more consistent. I think we're seeing very clearly Russ is better in a situation with fewer variables. Couple other pieces of information to kind of add into this. The play clock. For a long time, Seattle has had an issue getting to the line on time. It comes in different spots. It's been in critical positions. They took delay of game penalties or called timeouts to avoid delay of game penalties really frequently. I always chalk that up to what I called Pete Carroll's disorganized sideline. That's what I thought it was. I thought that the layers that they went through in their communication, whether it was Pete having to chime in, because and I'll go back before Schottenheimer, when they had Tom Cable and Darrell Bevel, you had this odd situation in which Cable called the protections and Bevel called the pass plays. That's unusual. Usually the offensive coordinator is calling both. The offensive line coach will tell them what protect, but he's in that it was unique. And run game, like the run calls were Cable's. I thought that structure and throw in that Pete has more people on the sidelines. You see how Pete acts during games. Like Pete's sideline is not like he likes the emotion of it. He has a rowdy sideline. And so I thought all of that was part of the reason why they would be so late getting to the line of scrimmage. Nope. Like definitively answered. We know why that was. It was Russ. They were having the exact same issue in Denver at the start of the season. The exact same issue. So that tells you that the issue was not the timing in which Russ was getting the play call. It was not when he was getting, it was his ability to take that play call, get the team to the line of scrimmage, call out the play, and run it. That's the issue. Fewer variables. I think that's another thing. Like, that piece of information dovetails with Russ is better in a situation with fewer variables. The wristband is the final part. And I want to be clear. I think this is goofy. Like, at its core, I want to remind everybody that Russ is right about we won a heck of a lot of games without a wristband. And also, Russ wore the wristband earlier in his career. So this isn't something that, like, all of a sudden he got prideful. Like, there is too much made of this. However, like, the one part where it is, they put in a new offense last year, and Russ didn't want to wear the wristband. And Gino's wearing it. And I think there's some credence that perhaps Seattle would have been better off if Russ had wore the wristband last year. The part where it's crazy is like, oh, Russ was so stubborn and we're finally freed from that, where it's like, okay, up until last year, like last year you could sort of say and question the overall performance of the team and the offense. It's really hard to do that before that. Like, it's really hard to say, like, you look at that. I mentioned the 2015, the final 8 games of that season. Russ is wearing a wristband. They're going to be better. No, they're not. Russ was awesome. Like, for the most part, for most of Russ's first 9 years, he was awesome. So I don't want to extend this where all of a sudden it's like the emperor has had no clothes, because I think there is something. Russell Wilson in Denver 2022 is not the same as Russell Wilson in Seattle 2019. Like, I don't believe I believe there's been a change in the caliber of his play, and that might be related to a short-term injury, and it might be related to something that is more of a sort of long-term performance. This might be a decline in athletic performance. But the fewer variables thing, it is. And Russ is wearing the wristband now. And I saw a picture of him this week where he's got the wristband on during his press conference. And I laughed at that one. Like I was saying earlier, like, there's part of me that feels bad if he's so on tilt that he's calling out audibles from the Seahawks. There's part of me where I'm just like, oh, I feel bad at that part. The wristband thing, I think, is funny. I'm Danny O'Neill. This is the Dang Apostrophe. I mentioned it's a newsletter. You can find it at Substack. If you search the Dang Apostrophe off Google, you can find it via my Twitter account. It's a paid subscription, or you can subscribe for free, but the full access to it is a paid subscription. It's what I'm doing as part of sort of my freelance writing career. I'd love it if you checked it out. I'm grateful that you watched this, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.